So I have a little bit of a rapid-ish fire game that I want to play with you.
Yes.
So the team has done a little bit of research, and according to us, there are 7 major planetary shifts happening in 2026. So I want to
Hmm.
read them off to you, and then have you give us maybe 3 words that describe each of these shifts, and then we can kind of talk more about it generally.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is Neptune re-entering Aries in January 26th.
So Neptune entering Aries, I would say artistic renaissance. Our ideals in terms of progress. So progress, like what do we want, in terms of, fresh, new, innovative. So I would say that those would be the words with Neptune and Aries. Fresh, new, innovative.
Saturn re-enters Aries.
Personal responsibility. Rogue governments. Rogue governments, rogue leaders. Those would probably be the top themes I would associate with that.
Uranus re-enters Gemini.
Technological advancement, reframing our relationship with social media, and also ethics in tech.
This next one I don't think we talked about, so I feel like we may need a definition. So Chiron enters Taurus. What are we referring to when we talk about Chiron?
Chiron is actually a more modern astrological concept, if you will. Chiron, I believe, was discovered in like 1977, and it was an asteroid. So there's a branch of astrology that actually incorporates asteroids in addition to the planets. When we talk about like human behavior and personal development and things of that nature. So Chiron in itself represents a wound. So we call like Chiron the wounded healer. So the myth or the story behind Chiron was that Chiron was a great teacher and a great healer and could heal others, but couldn't heal himself. So whenever I think about Chiron, sometimes I think about it as being like, advice that we can give, but we don't know how to take our own advice. Sometimes Chiron could represent like a place where we feel awkward or kind of self-conscious, but by doing the thing that we might be afraid to do or scared to do, we actually like can kind of heal that wound. So Taurus is a sign that is connected to self-worth. It's a Venus rule sign. So if you remember, values, self-worth, those are big Taurus themes. So when we talk about Chiron and Taurus, to me, it kind of piggybacks off of some of what we've been learning while Uranus has been in Taurus. And some of that is connected to our value system in our society is very broken, extremely broken. We value the wrong things. And everything that's going on right now is a sort of consequence or repercussion of our skewed values. And so Chiron being in Taurus, I think will push us to kind of heal that within us, right? Like the ways in which we value wealth, the ways in which we value power, the ways in which we value things that aren't really worth it to some degree, right? And so I think that will be a big theme that comes up while Chiron is in Taurus.
What about Jupiter entering Leo?
Jupiter is the planet of growth and opportunity, right? Whatever Jupiter touches, it wants to expand. So that could be good, and it can also be bad. It's two sides to every coin. And so Jupiter in Leo can be like, more creativity, more fun, more romance, more confidence. But it can also be more of, more ego, excess, overindulgence, me, and all of that, that comes with that. So it can be it could go two ways.
Okay, what about lunar nodes entering Leo and Aquarius?
So the lunar nodes, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the battle between me and we, the me and the we, the democracy and the dictatorship, that battle, and the leader, right, or the power of many versus the power of the few.
And then the 7th one is Venus retrograde through Scorpio and Libra.
Venus retrograde again is all about reevaluation. So what are we reevaluating? We are evaluating our relationships, intimacy, and our relationship to power, right? Because Scorpio is power. Scorpio is also connected to intimacy, and Libra is relationships and how we connect with each other.
So, Mecca, of these transits, which one has you most excited, and maybe which one has you a little nervous?
Oh gosh, most excited. I kind of hope that Jupiter in Leo brings back a little fun. I'm a Sagittarius. I'm a fire sign. I also have some strong Leo in my chart. And I feel like I'm like, where is the fun? So I don't know. I kind of hope. I don't know. I'm not holding out a lot of hope for that one, but I do wish that Jupiter and Leo would bring back some joy. The art piece is really, really big for me. I am a creative person. I love art, music, film, photography, whatever. I would love to see a renaissance in that, and that if Sinners, the popularity of Sinners was any indication, of that sort of resurgence of that renaissance. I would love to see more of that. With the North Node in Aquarius and the Aquarius eclipses coming in, again, I really am excited about the focus on community and the everyday person doing their part to make the world better. And that also ties into what I was saying about Saturn being in Aries and like personal responsibility. I think that, as we go into this new year, this is a good time to think about like, what is our personal response our personal responsibility in terms of making the world better. Like, how can we play our own individual role in that, even if it's something small? So like, for example, I had just watched a Netflix documentary called Buy Now, which was talking about like the effects of consumerism on our environment, on our wallets, on other countries and things of that nature, and how we should all be in the practice of consuming as less as possible, because there's just too much junk. There's too much trash. There's just too much in the world right now for it to go anywhere. And so I was thinking about, okay, well, how do I hold on? I just had to buy a new cell phone because the other one that I had broke down, Mercury. And so I'm like, okay, how do I make this one last beyond the 2 or 3 years? Like when it clunks out, like how do I make that? So I've just been thinking about like, how do I make things last? I've also been shopping a lot less. And that was something that we had spoke about in our last session. What I was saying, like, this is a year where people have to be, we're going to have to be very smart and sort of conscientious about where our money is going and what we're spending money on, right? So shout out to Target. Because we boycotted Target because we was like, you want to roll back your DEI, you don't need our money, right? And so we saw what happens when we collectively come together to say, we're going to take our spending power and use it in other ways, right? And I really believe that that's one of the biggest ways to get like these like larger corporations, to listen. You got to hit them in the wallet, right? So, yeah, just thinking about like, what is our personal responsibility or individual responsibility, and how can we use that and come together with other people, right, to make things move, to make things happen.
And any in particular make you nervous?
Yes. I'm concerned a little bit about the Uranus in Gemini. I mean, I saw a little bit of it earlier this year. And I saw like how a lot of these like tech giants and corporations are trying to amass even more power than they already have in terms of like getting our private information and keeping tabs on us, and how they're trying to build a super computer that can kind of like, getting every like facial recognition and keep, like, especially, because we are under, a authoritarian regime at this point. And one of the tactics, that they use is, intimidation, right? And, I've seen people talk about how they've been getting visits from the FBI, so these kinds of things in terms of like what tech can do, especially also in terms of how it affects climate. And we've seen like, the storms, hurricanes and things like that, like natural disasters getting worse and worse. Like, what just happened in Jamaica, for example, right? So when I was saying, Uranus and Gemini and like ethics, Uranus is a planet that's known for like instability and things kind of just happening like ad hoc, And so I think there definitely needs to be like some deep re-regulation with respect to how we engage with tech. I mean, AI, right? Like that, we saw how scary that can get, right? And I know that there are people who say like, well, we need AI and we need to like, and on one hand, it's like, okay, I get that, but we also need some regulations around like how we're engaging with this, right? So yeah, so I'm concerned about that, and also our over reliance on social media too. I think it's just gotten way unhealthy in terms of how we use it and engage with it. So that's one thing, and then I'm always nervous when the eclipses come around because the eclipses, they shake things up. They shake things up, and it can be very, very stressful. Not only just in terms of like collectively, but also like in our individual lives. So whenever the eclipses come around, my rule of thumb for folks is to always say like, try to keep your schedule as light as possible for those 2 weeks. Try to rest, try to unplug, try to just self-care, needs to be like don't neglect the self-care, because eclipses, when they happen, even though the day of an eclipse, something big might necessarily happen on the day of, because eclipses have a 6-month lifespan. The energy still is pretty heavy. It can be very hard, like physically, mentally. A lot of times, there are astrologers who talk about like if people are dealing with mental health issues, for this to be a time where they have to take extra care, because eclipses can be triggering in that way. The eclipse is I'm always like, batten down the hatches. So yeah, that's probably what I'm most concerned about. Yeah.
And any advice for navigating 2026 given these transits?
Yeah, so I think it kind of goes back a little bit to what I was saying earlier about this being a time to really take a hard look, at our lives, and really think about like, what have we been clinging to and holding on to and afraid to move away from, or afraid to let go, or afraid to try, and really thinking about like letting those things go, finding the courage to do something new, to do something different, even if we might not be 100% certain that is going to work, right? For us not to stay stuck in the old way, in the old thinking, in the old, like, well, or even just kind of like doing the thing that sometimes I even do to myself, where I'm like shutting myself down before I even begin a thing or even do a thing. You know what I mean? Like with the entry of these outer planets going into fire and air, it means things are going to be moving, at a much faster pace than we've been accustomed to. And it means that there is a need for new ideas. There's a need for, like I said, new blood. There's a need for change, and trying things and experimenting with things and seeing like what works, what doesn't work, what can we do better, right? Rather than kind of going with this old way of doing things of like, well, that's never worked before, so why bother? Like, well, maybe it might work now. Maybe third time's the charm, maybe 10 times the charm. We don't know, right? Like, this is a time, to get curious, to be, brave enough to step outside your comfort zone, to embrace something new, and kind of think about like, like what have you been doing for too long that has become familiar, that has become comfortable, but it's not really helping you or working for you anymore. That's what you want to work on, like changing.